All right, welcome to Cwic Show. My name is Greg Mattson, and I am your host. In this episode, transgenderism, queer theory, being taught to your kids in primary. There's a report online that I want to cover. First, make sure that you subscribe and that you hit the bell so that you can receive the notifications. Also, this episode is brought to you by Cardio Miracle. This is the only supplement that I've ever taken that has made drastic changes in my lab work. I've taken Cardio Miracle for over a year now. The changes are real. Give it a try. Go to cwicmedia.com, that's CWICmedia.com. Scroll to the bottom and watch the video and try Cardio Miracle. It's a 90-day money-back guarantee. I literally had someone I met at an event 2 days ago who said, the best thing I like about your show is Cardio Miracle. And he's been on it for several months. It does work. All right, now there is a reason I am bringing this up. I have gone over several of these episodes, these concerning events in people's wards and stakes for several years now. And I've been telling you this is coming. It is coming to your ward. If you live in the United States, especially, but in the West and beyond, these things are going to start popping up in your ward if they haven't already. We've talked about events where we had young women's leaders reading from Ibram Kendi's Anti-Racism in Young Women's, or quoting it in testimony meeting from the pulpit. Young women and primary leaders who have talked about pride and used rainbow colors to explain how several kids are different, and this is why you want to learn about this. And in many cases, going into very specific indoctrination into queer theory. Now, I get these messages all the time, but they're kind of been the same. It's usually from the pulpit or a teacher brought something up. I mean, these are all concerning, and it's happening more and more and more. The reason I'm bringing this up is because there's an extra little element here that has happened, and because it is in primary. Don't think that because your kids are in primary that there isn't a chance that they're going to start learning about queer theory or anti-racism or other critical social justice types of disciplines. These all come from the same place. Radical feminism, transgenderism, LGBTQ, gay issues, anti-racism and critical race theory. These are all part of what I call the Hydra, right? Part of the religion of academia. The Hydra, it's the same body, it's critical social justice, and then you've got all of these different heads that sprout up that are basically built off of different disciplines found in different theory that is taught in a humanities department and then spreads out from there until it reaches primary in your ward. This is all about liberation. It is not liberty. It is liberation. It is throwing off the shackles of Western democracy and Western thought and Christianity and sexuality, right? Seeing the binary of a man and a woman, male and female, breaking that down. All of these ideologies and these movements are inherently created to break these systems down. That is their goal. They do not hide it. Maybe others that you talk to that don't know about these things, that don't read about the specific founders and movers and shakers of queer theory and anti-racism, they don't know because they don't research it. They don't know where these things come from. They don't understand that it is a bad tree. It is a corrupt tree. And a corrupt tree is not going to produce good fruit. These things are spreading because they are an ideology. It's not just a matter of Gen Z having almost now 1 in 4 individuals identifying as LGBTQ, non-binary, etc. This is a movement. And there is an ideology that inherently requires those that begin to adhere to it to be activists and to push it forward. It's part of all of the writings. And because, especially in the gospel, in the church, in Christianity, because this ideology is so antithetical to Christianity, then there has to be a push against Christianity. There has to be a push against the traditional family. There has to be a push eventually against marriage between a man and a woman. There has to be a push against a man being called a man and a woman being called a woman. So this story popped up on Facebook this weekend from a woman who has children in primary. And she says, there's a family in my ward whose 6-year-old son has been dressing like a girl for the last 3 years. Now, I want to start off here and just say something about this. She's going to say that this has not affected them and there's not a problem. I get it. You do what you have to do to work with different people, right? But here you have parents, a parent or parents, who are dressing their boy as a girl from the time that he is 3 years old. Now that in and of itself is a form of indoctrination. Maybe the kid is already feminine, maybe he's gay, whatever it might be. Regardless, to start having that child present himself as a girl at 3 years old, there's already a major issue and problem here with these parents. They are adhering to an ideology. So that should put up a red flag immediately. Now, she says that the mother of this boy was an activity day leader, and she read a trans book to the girls at a church activity, right? Now, all of a sudden, okay, where is this going to? It's not just, hey, be nice to my boy who we want to be a girl. It's, I want to teach you about this idea and this ideology. And we're going to teach it to young kids, to your kids in primary. Why does this happen? Because activism is a part of this. They want full acceptance for their moving outside of social norms. They want you to understand this. And then they want you to agree with them. And if you don't, then you are a hater. If you don't go along with them, you're a hater. And this is where it always goes. It starts with, hey, just accept us and what we're trying to do here. Look, there's already a problem there. But then it moves on to, let me indoctrinate your kids too. And this is happening at school all the time in public schools. But you wouldn't expect it to happen at primary. But this is going to come more and more to your ward in the different organizations because there is no strong pushback on this, right? The church is going through a process right now where it's trying to learn how they're going to work through it because it's coming stronger and stronger. We are at the tip of the iceberg of where this is going. Just look at other institutions. Look at the change from just millennials to Gen Z. What is the next generation going to be like? And as you'll see in this instance, there's really not much pushback on this. She says, my husband and I let the bishop know that we were upset that this had happened at a church activity and thought it was inappropriate and that other parents should be informed. Yes, absolutely. My husband also wanted her released from the calling, and she should be. The brazen attitude of going out and saying, oh, I'm going to teach these kids. This is just like, taking the first grade teacher who says, hey, I have a position of power here in teaching. I'm not going to tell the parents what I'm doing, which these programs happen all the time without telling the parents at public schools. But we've got the power to be able to teach the kids the way that we want to teach them. And again, since in this ideology, it inherently activates you, then you're going to have manifestations of this. And I want to be real clear, right? There is a difference between, there is a gay youth, right? Someone who has same-sex attraction, someone who has come out of the closet, so to speak. There's a difference between saying, I still love you, and I know you're probably going through problems, and I love you no matter what, right? That's one side of things. And then to the other side of actually saying, there's an ideology behind some of these things that tries to push and indoctrinate people into these ideas and this movement and activate them. That's what the ideologies are built for. That's not even an interpretation. That is what they state. They all talk about this, right? Just go through Queer Theory here. Just go through Gender Trouble here by Judith Butler. This is one of the founding texts to queer theory, right? Here's chapter 1, and here you've got just a bunch of quotes from a number of different people, right? Here's the quote, first one. One is not born a woman, but rather becomes one. Another one, strictly speaking, women cannot be said to exist. Woman does not have a sex. The category of sex is the political category that founds society as heterosexual. See that last statement there, the category of sex is the political category that founds society as heterosexual, is an attack. It's a political attack against heterosexuality and the systems that are built on that foundation of that binary of man and woman. The whole issue here is, to them, this is political. It's a political system. And because all of these ideologies, part of this hydra, believe that these things are all a social construct, right? By saying so, because it's not science, because it's not real, it's simply what we make it to be. Woman is simply what you make it to be. Race is simply what you make it to be. Because these are all social constructs, we can change them. And that's how you soften the system, right? All of these things, it's like Jesus himself, when you need to make him into something else, we've talked a lot about that, you have to soften him. It's the same thing with the binary, with male and female. You have to soften these strong systems that are already in place. And you say that they're social constructs. Now, you'll hear oftentimes that there is, well, it's gender, right? There's a gender expression. That's up here on top. You can have a male and a female, but above that, there is gender, and that male or that female may self-identify with any number of genders. Okay, that's the first step. But as you saw here, this quote is about sex itself and male and female. When you respond to that and you say, oh, okay, so this male who is expressing themselves as a woman, this male then is male, right? This is a male. And you will get pushback because it's not just a matter of gender. It is a matter of sex. Gender is just the first level to break down, and then you have to go to sex, and you have to break that down as well, and you have to go against biology. And certainly within the Latter-day Saint tradition, you're going to go against gender and sex found within the Family Proclamation. But of course, if you ever bring up the Family Proclamation, well, you're using it as a cudgel, you're using it as a club. And that's just not true. You're using it as truth. And you're using it to fight off these ridiculous ideologies that are spreading everywhere. So again, if they can say it is a club, it's a cudgel, well, then they shut you up. But it is there for a reason. And obviously, very inspired to be used and understood, because it is a breakdown of the family that is happening. And nobody can deny that. The numbers show this everywhere. Single parents, the binary being eroded before our eyes right now. A push off on marriage, a push off on having kids. These are all results of these ideas and these ideologies. This woman goes on and she says, we told 2 other families that have daughters the same age and were at the activity. We didn't make a big deal out of it. After a couple of weeks, it was clear that the bishop was choosing to ignore the whole thing and hope we would just go away. Well, of course, because the bishop doesn't want to get in the middle of all this. I mean, this is a problem. This is an issue. And you're going to have plenty of bishops that are probably going to support the parents of the transgender child, the parents that are dressing their boy as a girl. So she says, we escalated things to the stake presidency, and I'm guessing they put pressure on the bishop to talk with this family. I have no idea what the bishop said, but the father of this family called my husband to yell at him and accuse us of hating his child and his family and that we weren't being Christ-like. Now, is using Christ-like here being used as a club or as a cudgel? And this is where this will go, right? If you disagree with this, if you push back on this, then you are the hater. She says that night they called around the ward, told everyone that we hated their son, and asked that everyone show up in pride apparel to church the next day to support them. Here we get back to the pride flag and the pride colors. What does this really mean? I mean, if you're, again, here, everyone says, well, again, here, many will say, well, I'm just supporting an individual. I'm just supporting my child, or I'm just supporting those that are going through tough times that struggle with same-sex attraction or gender dysphoria or whatever it is. But that's not true. This is a perfect example. They're not just supporting the kid. These are parents that have their son being dressed as a girl from the time that he is 3 years old. Putting on that pride flag to support that is an insidious act. Putting on the pride flag to support this other woman, teaching young children about transgenderism, is a movement. It is support for a movement. She says, when I saw my kids' primary teachers and the primary chorister wearing pride pins, I didn't want them going to primary alone. I wouldn't have let them in at all. Honestly, I wanted to run home and cry, she says, but I didn't want to give them the satisfaction of thinking they'd beaten me. We met with the stake president a couple of days later. He seemed very appalled and understanding. He said this would all be taken care of, but then left it to our bishop to take care of, who did nothing other than a fifth Sunday lesson, not taught by him. He doesn't want to get involved, which was about getting along and being peaceful, right? So I wanted to bring this out because, again, I haven't talked about this happening in church in a while. And it's important to be aware that this ideology is going to show up in your ward if it hasn't already. I know for many of you have already sent me information on these things. But this is not hard to see, right? This is parallelism. These are patterns. You see this going through BYU. You see this going through K-12. You see this happening in other churches. And you see how it sprouts and roots itself and divides everybody. So what is going to happen in our church? We're all human beings. This is the same ideology. And to think that somehow we are protected from all of this happening, I think is naive. In my estimation, yes, I would go to the priesthood leaders, but I think you should have a real understanding of the proclamation on the family, the doctrine of Christ, and what we do in the temple. And honestly, I'm just speaking for myself. I would not put up with any of this. I would not put up with any of it. And if the priesthood leaders are going to allow it to happen, even after it's brought up, even after it is divisive, because all of these things are divisive. All of these things want to break down current systems, the family, the church, quite frankly, the temple. It's going to be divisive. Awareness is key, and then you need to talk to your kids. You need to teach them about the Family Proclamation. You need to teach them that we can love others without accepting certain things. We should actually teach them, even in my humble opinion, even when they're younger, that there are ideas and ideologies out there that are pernicious, while at the same time not teaching them to hate people. Right? It's the natural response is, well, if I'm going to push back on all of this, I'm going to look down on others. And that's the hard thing. That's why this thing is so powerful. It tugs on your empathy. That family proclamation is a defense for your family. That Family Proclamation is a defense for your kids. Let me just finish by reading something I've read several times before. This is the second to last paragraph of the Proclamation on the Family. And this is happening. It says, "We warn that individuals who violate covenants of chastity, who abuse spouse or offspring, or who fail to fulfill family responsibilities will one day stand accountable before God. Further, we warn that the disintegration of the family will bring upon individuals, communities, and nations the calamities foretold by ancient and modern prophets. When you destroy gender and sex, when you push an ideology that does not help support marriage between a man and a woman and them having children and rearing children in a stable environment, then water runs downhill. Then it is going to disintegrate. The shortest, simplest advice I can give you from having studied these things for 11 years is to teach your kids the Family Proclamation and to teach them why family is so important, to teach them about male and female and gender, man and woman, and to let them know that others may not believe this or others may not act like this, but that this is the truth. Children should not be indoctrinated with sexuality. Children should not be indoctrinated with queer theory and gender ideology. They should not be indoctrinated with how they self-identify. They should not be indoctrinated with pronouns. If you're an adult and that's what you choose, that's your choice. But they're going after the kids. Talk about President Nelson's identity hierarchy, being that this is primary, with the number one identity being a child of God. We're all children of God. And that as these other ideologies try to raise up these other lesser identities, and I'm not talking just about homosexuality or transgenderism, I'm talking about heterosexuality, even man and woman. These are all lesser identities to being a child of God, being a child of the covenant, and being a disciple of Christ. Then there's man and woman. And then everything else, however we feel about ourselves, however we express ourselves, all of these labels that we might put on ourselves, those are all down below. And critical social justice tries to raise these labels, race, sexual orientation, gender, pronouns, tries to raise them above so that the focus is on those lesser identities. It wants to turn that identity hierarchy on its head. The Family Proclamation can help you fight against that. Thanks for listening.